Joining us now, Eddie Yeranian, our man in the Middle East. Eddie, longtime CBS veteran radio correspondent based in Cairo. Ed Yeranian, also a senior member of the Voice of America team, and he's been with the John Fredericks Radio Network for 7 years and 8 months, according to our statistician, Den Black. By the way, Den gave me a little printout there called the climate. What was that called, Den? The climate delusion, which I did read on the plane last night, and pretty compelling stuff. Joining us now, though, Eddie Yeranian. Eddie, great to have you, man. I'm live in New Hampshire.
Thank you, John. Welcome to Cairo, and I give my greetings to New Hampshire.
Now, you said your Twitter didn't work today. Did you get banned? Did Twitter ban you?
It's very possible the internet is slow because this is a 4-day Islamic holiday, and everybody is using the internet, and there's a lot of pressure on it, and a lot of things are not working right now.
All right, well, that makes sense. Okay, so seems like you're not banned. Ed, I want to get to Hong Kong. I'm going to ask Bannon about this at 8, but this is the second day of protests that have shut down, Ed, one of the biggest airports in the world. They've shut it down for 2 days. These are young people. I mean, you look at these protesters, they're young people. They want freedom. They're free in Hong Kong. They don't want to be under the thumb of the Chi-Coms and the Chinese Communist government. They don't want, certainly, this started with the legislative initiative to extradite criminals back to China, which, of course, everybody knew as soon as they went there, they're done. You'll never see them again. So it started there. Now they're shutting down airports. This is growing. Concern for the Chi-Com government, for the communists now? What do they do?
Well, it hasn't spread to the mainland so far, at least to the best of anyone's knowledge. Perhaps if that happens, then the government should start worrying. No doubt they are worrying about this. This is certainly something that looks bad to them. And who is behind it? I mean, they are accusing Western forces of being behind it. I have no idea if that's true or not. Certainly a lot of reason for a spontaneous combustion rather than someone necessarily fanning the flames, but someone could be fanning the flames as well. I heard the use of the term conspiracy theory by the journalist who is berating President Trump about tweeting that the Clintons or Bill Clinton was behind Jeffrey Epstein's suicide. I don't know who is behind it, if anyone, but certainly the use of the word conspiracy is the conspiracy term word expression is meant to make you stop thinking. So clearly this is a possibility that some foreign forces are behind these or are fanning the flames of these demonstrations. Certainly the BBC has been covering them very thoroughly. Hong Kong used to be a British colony, as was India, as we were going to discuss in the next few minutes. And a lot of former British colonies have serious issues, different forces fighting each other, and many claims when they became independent that Britain supported one side and not the other. Of course, Hong Kong is a different issue. Hong Kong was lopped off from China, I guess, during the Opium Wars.
Right.
So was Macau. Macau was a former Portuguese colony. So a lot of historic colonial issues at play too. But the one thing that sticks out in Hong Kong, of course, is that they've got a British system, some remnants of the British system, and individual liberties that people on the mainland do not have.
I think you're spot on here. It hasn't spread to the mainland. There will be calls that other countries were instigating this, but that's very difficult to do because you've got young people, that this is really a young people's movement, and what they want is they want to maintain their freedom. They want to maintain their liberty, and that is really what this protest is about. It started, remember, with the extradition legislation. And, one of the biggest issues that the Chinese government has on the mainland is all these people they have and all these young people coming into the job market, and they have to have jobs for them. I mean, what gets young people to riot and what gets you at Tiananmen Square is lack of freedom and no job. I mean, that's a lot of people say that's what fueled ISIS and that's what fueled Al Qaeda, right? Lack of a freedom and lack of a job. And so that's how they're able to recruit. I don't know what's going to happen here, Ed, but it's a beautiful thing to watch until the Chinese decide they've had enough and they send in troops, and then we have a Tiananmen Square. And remember, during Tiananmen Square, the U.S. really had no role. I mean, it was probably one of the saddest weeks of the George H. Bush administration. He did nothing. The U.S. government did nothing. They said nothing. They did nothing. They simply watched. And as those people, we don't even know how many people got slaughtered to this day in Tiananmen Square. No one knows. I mean, it could have been in the tens of thousands. No one has any idea what happened to those people, how many were thrown in jail, tortured. No one knows. And we did nothing. I don't think the Trump administration is going to sit around and see troops pouring into the streets of Hong Kong and tanks killing teenagers and 20-year-olds. I don't think they're going to stand around for that. So we'll see, right? We'll see what happens, but it's a big deal. All right, let's get to India. Let's get to India, Ed. The Modi administration annexing Kashmir, doing it at a time where the Trump administration is boxed in, right? Number one, they need Pakistan to be an ally for their initiative to get out of Afghanistan. So they don't want to aggravate the Pakistanis. India is a growing economy. We've got trade initiatives with them. We don't want another battle with them like we're having with China. So Modi, in I thought, a brilliant political chess move, annexes Kashmir, which they wanted to do for a long time, knew we wouldn't do anything, and we didn't, and now has stripped them of their rights, and now Pakistan upset. But Ed, both of these countries have nuclear weapons. Not good. What say Ed Yeranian?
Well, yes. In 1965, I believe they came very close to having a nuclear war over the same issues. I think, of course, we also had problems. They also had problems with Bangladesh as well, but that was later. I think they had another flash around 1970 when that was happening. But yes, I think the real problem here is that these two countries have a very sad saga, mutual saga going back to British colonial times. They were at one time the same country. It was under, British rule until 1949. And in fact, I think their Independence Day is tomorrow. They, up until the very last minute, they were still negotiating to be the same country. And I think at the time that Mahatma Gandhi had offered to Mr. Jinnah, the Pakistani, who had become the Pakistani president, the Muslim leader, the presidency of a united India. And it's unclear why he didn't accept, but he didn't. And so that's where we are. The country was partitioned. A lot of blood was spilled. A lot of people had to flee one state to another. So, they have a very bitter common history. And a lot of it is still very close to the surface, even though, as one of the Indian newspapers was pointing out this morning, no one has actually been killed. I haven't double-checked on that, but certainly that's what they were saying. And the Pakistani side, there were politicians claiming on Twitter that the Indians were using helicopter gunships to shoot at people in Kashmir on the ground, and that proved to be false. And a lot of venom in the air, more so than probably it would merit. But what the Pakistanis were saying, at least their prime minister, that this is a matter for the UN to resolve. Of course, they haven't been able to resolve the Palestinian issue either, after I don't know how many resolutions they've issued since 1948. But this is a UN issue because the UN is the party that says that this is a disputed territory and India does not have a right to annex it this way. So ultimately, and what you're saying about the U.S. Not intervening because the U.S. is boxed in, the Trump administration is boxed in. Certainly, I don't think either the Chinese or the Russians would like to antagonize either party either. So it probably wouldn't fly in the UN if anyone came up with a resolution, since nobody would want to antagonize either of the parties, either the Pakistanis or the Indians.
I tell you what, if you look at what Modi did, though, I mean, look, the Indians have wanted to do this for a long time, right? And they just couldn't. Internationally, they couldn't do it. Pakistan has international weapons. They've been an ally of the United States going back to President Zia, right, during the first Afghan conflict where we were involved with the Russians. And but he does this at a time, but you got to hand it to him, Ed. He does this at a time when he knows that there's going to be no U.S. response because Trump is stuck between a bunch of allies here that he needs, right? So he's not going to do anything. And so, yeah, it's bad for the Kashmir people, no question about it. And whenever countries annex others that don't want to be part of them and strip away their rights, whether it's Palestine or anything else, I'm suspect of it. What about you?
Yes, obviously. Unfortunately, people often act unilaterally. Leaders often act unilaterally. And perhaps China will do the same thing, something similar, and may, if this conflict is still, the protests are still going on, intervene in Hong Kong on U.S. election day, when President Trump or no one actually in the U.S. would be able to lift a finger. So who knows? I mean, countries often do things at times that are opportune moments, and Modi has done that, as you pointed out, and it was a brilliant move on his part, but it could lead to some sort of an international conflict. I mean, it's a very sore spot for Pakistan. Pakistan has nuclear weapons like India, and God forbid that this should ignite a larger conflict.
Well, that's always what you have to be concerned about here, is that both of these countries have nuclear weapons, and I don't think this is so. Look, this should be one of the biggest headlines, right? And why I always rail against the fake news and the legacy media, which really does not tell you the truth anymore about anything. This, under normal circumstances, should be one of the biggest headlines every day on cable news, on Fox, on New York Times. It's getting no coverage. Why? Because they'd rather say Trump sucks. It's so stupid what's going on right now. But this is like a huge deal, and it's getting absolutely no play other than me in America. I'm the only person talking about it that is in the United States, outside of maybe some of the international networks, but like BBC or something. Nobody else is talking about it. This is a big deal. And I don't think the Pakistanis are going to sit idly by and see, because the problem, India is majority Hindu. Kashmir is majority Muslim. So you're taking a people, this is a people, and you're stripping them of all of their rights and freedoms and liberties, and annexing them into your country, and now they become a minority within a country of a majority Hindu. This is not an easy thing to do, and Pakistan has been upset about the treatment of Kashmir for a long time. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's not good either way. But again, I don't think the administration can do anything, which leads us to my next question. Eddie Yeranian, live in Cairo. The negotiations between the Trump administration and the Taliban and Afghanistan. Look, Trump wants out of Afghanistan going into 2020. There is no question about it. He wants out. He promised he'd get out. He wants out. Only way to do that is by getting a deal with the Taliban, and they're going to have to bring the Taliban into the government, and part of the country is going to be under their control. There's no other way out of this. And the president wants out. Now he's using the Qataris to negotiate some kind of a deal. And, a lot of people look at this, and the Afghan government, which is seem to be feckless here, is not even the key part of the negotiations. What the hell is going on?
I think that you've got a problem because part of the U.S. government, the people, the bureaucracy, the foreign policy establishment, the military, a lot of people inside the bureaucracy don't want President Trump to pull out. Various reasons for that, some speculation, some of it is conspiracy theory stuff that I'm not going to mention on the air. But the bottom line is I think there are elements inside the U.S. government that don't want Trump to pull out, especially since it would give him a foreign policy victory. So I think that's going to make it doubly difficult for him to pull out. I think the Taliban know that, and I think Qatar knows that as well. And I'm not sure how eager Qatar is to facilitate the president's pullout from Afghanistan, even though it's helping with these negotiations. So a lot of forces pulling in different directions. Some of it meets the eye and some of it doesn't. And I think the bottom line, as in Syria, is that there are forces inside the U.S. government that don't want us to pull out of either Syria or Afghanistan.
When you say you don't want to spin a conspiracy theory, I've only got a minute and a half, but I'm intrigued now. Can you give us a little taste of what you're talking about?
Yes, I think there's been a lot of talk about drug money, drug smuggling in and out of Afghanistan, whether there is any relation to the international forces that are present there, the NATO forces present there, who or which party is involved in the smuggling. I think the San Jose Mercury News did a story about it, and it quickly got buried because nobody liked what they found. The mainstream media, which you just lambasted, absolutely buried the subject because it doesn't fit any of their agendas. And I believe very seriously that there are international forces that are smuggling drugs, whether they're inside governments, close to governments, close to intelligence agencies, which are close to governments. And I won't even name them because I don't know all the facts. I've just heard the speculation. And quite frankly, conspiracy theory is just a way to get you to stop thinking. So I suggest people go looking into this subject, whatever the facts may be. And I believe very seriously that's one of the reasons that they're going to try to foil Trump's pullout of Afghanistan.
Final question, just very quickly. Is Pakistan going to do anything in response to Modi's annexation of Kashmir?
I think the Pakistani prime minister has been pulling out all stops with his allies, with countries he deals with Britain, with the U.S., with Russia, with China, to try to find a diplomatic solution so he doesn't have his hand forced and isn't put in the position where he has to find some sort of reaction to the annexation, because I don't think he wants to get into a conflict. And I don't think Modi wants to get into a conflict either, but his move has put us one step closer to a potential conflict. So I think the Pakistani prime minister is playing all of his allies to find some sort of a diplomatic face-saving way out of this.
Ed Yeranian, thank you. Always love having you on. Live in Cairo, John Fredericks Radio Network.